All right, let's spend a few minutes focusing on the Alger Hiss case, which really starts for our purposes, in 1948. But you'll see that there is a lot more to this case that we can take a look at. There's so much that really, again, in many of these cases, there's been books and books written about these. One of the things, though, to kind of put it in perspective, historical perspective, and looking at the societal factors, is that you had the House Un-American Activities Committee looking at, what would become the communist threat. What you see here is a big fear of American secrets being passed to Russia. And so you have a very different mood at that particular time period. So you have to, what you're beginning to see is what would later be called the Red Scare and McCarthyism, and some would consider to be a witch hunt. So some might say this is kind of the beginning of this witch hunt for communists, and others would, of course, argue that this was a real threat that had to be addressed. Obviously, if you read the literature on the Red Scare and McCarthyism, I think you'd see that most of the historians come down on McCarthy as having a negative impact and doing things that ruined many people's lives. Uh, and so there's a lot of debate about that still, of course. One thing that I think is helpful is to try to, first of all, construct a timeline, which I went ahead and did for you, and so you basically can see that both Chambers and Hiss have multiple interactions with the House Un-American Activities Committee, the HUAC, and also you see that an individual who certainly the name will ring a bell right away, Richard Nixon, who is a very ambitious politician at the time. And of course, later Nixon would go on to become president of the United States. And then we would see a big scandal and trouble for Nixon later on with the Watergate situation. So you also have lawsuits, and you have uh, allegations of espionage. You have a lot of trials and hearings in that regard, and so you can kind of follow those. Hiss denied all of these allegations that he was a spy for the Soviet Union up to his death, and there's still a lot of debate, and his son has lectured and written some stuff as well, and then some new material has come out that offers some support to that group that believes he was a spy. But then, of course, there's support for and literature and information of those who believe he was not. So again, I'm not going to come down one way or the other, but what's clear is that he was never convicted of espionage or being a spy. We'll see he was convicted for another crime and served a short jail sentence, but it was not espionage. And you got to also remember that this really occurs closely after World War II. So again, a lot of mistrust between countries, and the whole atomic threat is paramount as well. And again, we have to think about the context of everything. It's interesting to look at Hiss's background and Chambers' background, and I'm not going to go into detail on that, but you can look at their marital status, their schooling, their occupational history, their relationships, some of the other features that help set basically the scene. You also get some I guess some exterior material that's brought in to this particular case related to sexual behavior, which we sometimes see in different cases, even though it may be totally irrelevant to the case. So going through this case, you can see that really what ends up happening is Hiss is tried for perjury, which is providing inaccurate information to a jury. And many argue that this was one way to go after him for the the spying or espionage allegations, which really could not be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And Hiss maintained that he was not a member of the Communist Party, although Chambers makes allegations that Hiss was and passed secrets to Soviet spies and so on. And again, there's this person that apparently passed secrets, but we're not quite sure with any certainty who that person was. And you also see a lot of other interesting features. For example, Hiss and Chambers and the HUAC in August 17th, 1948. Hiss and Chambers confront each other in a private meeting at a hotel. And Hiss claimed he didn't know Chambers, but then he realizes that Chambers is this person that he knew, but he thought his name was George Crossley. So there's a lot of interesting twists and turns to this case. And Hiss files a slander lawsuit against Chambers, and we can see how that plays out. There's a search for evidence, and if you look at one of the videos, it shows them looking for a roll of film in a pumpkin, and the whole idea of the pumpkin papers or the pumpkin patch in investigation. And again, you're looking at different types of technology here, and so again, interesting to look at that, and the trial, again, the time period and the social mood, a couple perjury trials, and this really politics plays a huge role. Hiss eventually is convicted of perjury and ends up spending 44 months in prison, which many say the country club prison, which meant a nicer prison, I guess. We still use that term sometimes to refer to where white-collar criminals end up spending their time. The 1950s really becomes the time period of McCarthyism, and you can read about that as well. And you can see that Nixon continues to use the Hiss case in his political career. Of course, Chambers writes a book, Hiss writes a book, Nixon writes a book, and a whole bunch of other people write books too. And the media, of course, still looks at this whole situation. And there's some contact with Soviet representatives as well. And, the interesting thing, I guess, is that, I'd ask, how do you make sense of this case? And did the political climate influence different aspects of it? And can you think of similar situations in politics occurring today with different cases? So again, history repeats itself in a different mode, if you will, with different levels of technology and different types of allegations against different types of groups and people and the like. But it's a fascinating case to study, and your authors do a superb job of covering the case in your book. And then also I have provided some links on our website to some interviews with some authors and researchers. Again, I don't know really what to say regarding, other than what the court found. So again, there's always that uncertainty, I think, with these cases so far, except the Leopold and Loeb case. We're pretty confident what happened. The only thing we don't know is who was the main perpetrator who did the killing. And then also with the Scottsboro boys, of course, in that case, we're pretty confident that there was wrongful convictions. So the last few cases, certainly the Hoffman case, the Limburg kidnapping, and his case here, again, we see that uncertainty. And so, think about how that all plays into the criminal justice system. And this wraps up this video.